Bhagavato Sambuddhassa Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa. Morning, everyone. Today we are going to move into a quite new section within our same chapter of Ultimacy. So far, we have discussed about the natures that really exist, which we call ultimate natures. Divided into groups: the conditioned reality, Sankata, and the unconditioned reality, the Asankata. Within the conditioned group, we discussed about 4 types of natures: Paramatta Dhamma, Paramatta Jatika, Upadino Dhamma, and Anupada Dhamma. And in the Asankata group, unconditioned group, we discussed about 5 types of Nirvana. And then, normally according to Buddhism, what doesn't belong to ultimacy should be put under concept. So we normally have a classification which is called concept and ultimacy. But when we look into the doctrine quite bit much attention, we do find some other natures, rather you can say natures or characteristics, states, whatever word we use, things that have been discussed within the doctrine but doesn't fall into the group of that should not be considered as ultimate realities, but at the same time should not be considered as concepts. So we find them in between the ultimacy and conceptual ideas. So if we categorize them before we go into the board, we find like there are certain types of material attributes which we call Anipanna Rupas, which are connected to the matter but not concretely, should not be considered as perfect matter. Then there are certain conditional forces which we'll be discussing today. And there are also some, we know that the universal characteristics, which is called Anicca, Dukkha, and Anatta, which are also related to ultimacy, but should not be considered as ultimate natures. Related to ultimacy, but should not be considered as ultimate natures. And then also we have something called Gati. Gati is one kind of state related to lives. And also we have the space, which also can be found. But within the Theravada doctrine, these natures have not been directly addressed or explained either as ultimate natures or as concepts. So in these lectures, I would keep them in between the world of ultimacy and the concepts. But when we keep on discussing on these matters, sometimes you may find that some of these natures could be put under the ultimate categorization, the categorization of ultimacy. It is possible. Why did I put them in between? Is because they have not been directly addressed within the tradition as ultimate natures. So I would take them as something that really exists, that can be found, that can be known with the mind. It's not a synthesized object like the concepts. Their functioning, their existence can be verified, but still they do not fall into we call as ultimate natures like Chitta, Chaitanya, and Rupa. So we'll first try to see them. Where should they be located within the diagram of ultimate reality? So first we go into the chart, the Paramatta. The Sukhol and Sankata, the conditioned realities. Then asankata paramatta, unconditioned. The conditioned realities were fourfold, if you remember. Paramatta, Dhamma, when we have Uppadino Dhamma, the realities that are supposed to happen due to the karma that has gained the opportunity. Then Paramatta Jatika, certain kind of forces, latent potencies, we can call. Then Anuppanna Dhamma, the realities possible to arise in future. Then Asankata Paramatta, we had 3 lectures about them. We call them Sammuti Nibbana. Then we had, if you remember, Tadanga Nibbana. Then we have Vikambana Nibbana. Then we have Samuchcheda Nibbana and Nissarana Nibbana. So the last 2 are the Nibbanas that we aspire to attain. These can be attained in our day-to-day lives, but sometimes we get deprived of such states. Then we have a completely different sector called Panyati. In Pali, we call Panyati. In English, we call them concepts. Concepts. So when we say concepts in English, we have various meanings to these. But in Pali, when we come into the Theravada tradition, we have a specific definition for that. I'll be taking an entire lecture to show what are the concepts and how they are different from these realities, right? So roughly talking, we have 2 types of concepts. We normally call Atta Panyati and Nama Panyati. Pay not the nanny. Huh? Nama Panyati. And then also we have something called Saddha Panyati, which is very rarely discussed. I'll be briefly explaining them. I'll just put a star there because it is not that much found, and but still we need to discuss about that in brief. Now in between there's a broken line here in which I will be categorizing the topics that I'm going to discuss from today onwards. It will take nearly 2 weeks. One by one we'll be discussing. So what are these realities, not realities, that we can call the natures that do exist, like should be come into the ultimate group. So they are much closer to the ultimate the categorizations of Paramatta, ultimacy. Not they can never be Panyati, that's for sure. They fit to be, one can call that they are ultimate natures. If someone calls that, I would not fully disagree with that, because they tend to fall into this group. But still, as they are not found as separate realities, we tend to keep them in between. The same thing should be found with these 3, if you remember. They are not separate entities like the Paramatta Dhammas. But why did I put them here? They are necessary to explain about this Asankata. Without explaining these 2 especially, Anuppanna Dhamma and Paramatta Jatika, we are unable to express what Nirvana is. So therefore, within the tradition, otherwise we could have put them also here. We could have done that, because they are also not found as separate entities. They are just potencies. But they are much closer to this Paramatta Dhamma. So that's why we categorize them under this group, because we said the latent forces, the latent craving is the same. It is the latent craving that arises as a separate mental factor called lobha, called craving. So we do not distinguish them as 2 different layers, the latent level and the obsession level. So that's why they are much closer, and also they are necessary to explain what Nirvana is. Abandoning of
non-arising of Anupanna Dhammas itself is the Nirvana. Therefore, without understanding these states, especially these two, we are unable to explain the bliss of Nirvana and what is our aim, what is our goal, why it is the highest, why Buddha has mentioned it as the highest bliss. So all these explanations are based or possible on these categorized, on these explanation of these realities. So that's why I put, even though they are not separate entities, I still put them under this group. But the things that we are going to discuss here today are quite different from these stages. We better not to call them potencies. But still, when we discuss, we find that they are not mere concepts. They are not synthesized objects, synthesized by the mind. So that's why we keep them separately. So what are these realities? Number one would be Anippanna Rupa. For some, these Pali terms may be alien, but when we explain, we will understand what it is. Anippanna Rupa. Anippanna Rupa are, now we know in the Paramatta Dhammas, here we categorize into three groups: Chitta, the mind; Cetasika. Chitta, Cetasika is the mental factors; and Rupa, the material stuff. So these Anippanna Rupa are related to this group, right? So this group. So here, when we say Paramatta Dhamma Rupas, we have 18 types of Rupas, which should be mentioned as real entities. But these Anippanna Rupas, we have 10 in number. 10, right? 10 are related to these Rupas, but should not be considered as separate Rupas. We'll be discussing it about them today. It's better to say sometimes out of the 10, really what we are discussing as related are 5. The remaining can be put under some other groups. Anyway, because as the doctrine has 10 Anippanna Rupas, it is our duty to discuss about these 10. But to be true, actually, when we analyze them, we find really the Anippanna Rupas, what we are talking about are the 5, are 5 out of these 10. Then we have certain Paccaya forces. So I would call in English, because in Pali, because I have been using the board, the Pali terms have been used. Ekacce, Paccaya Sati. Paccaya Sati. Sati is a force. We normally call the Sati is the force. In Sinhalese or Sanskrit, we call Shakti. Shakti. Pali is Sati. Sati means the force, the ability we can call. Paccaya is the condition, the ability of the condition, the force of the condition. To what? To support, to arouse the effect. The ability of the cause to support or arouse the effect, cause the arising of the effect, is the Paccaya Sati. Ekacce means certain, not all. We are not talking about all Paccaya forces, certain Paccaya forces. Because we find these Paccaya forces apart from the Paccaya as well. Apart from the cause, the condition is there, condition has an ability. Even after the condition has vanished, some abilities do remain, even the condition has passed away. Like the karma. After the karma is done, a certain force remains within the mind stream. So likewise, after certain conditions, realities that support others, these conditions, condition means a reality in Theravada tradition, not the state. Conditions means the reality. A reality is a condition that supports another reality. So after the reality has passed away, its ability to support the effect or a certain attribute related to the reality would remain. So such, we can observe such three forces which can be known as existing. Then we move into another topic called Samanya Lakkana. Samanya Lakkana means, I think sometimes some would be really confused with these new Pali words. Samanya Lakkana means nothing other than the 3 universal characteristics of realities. What are these universal characteristics? We have impermanence, the nature of bringing suffering, non-selfness. Non-selfness. It means realities do arise and pass away. So they are impermanent. They are impermanent realities. They are struck by the impermanence. Impermanence is a certain nature, a certain law of the nature. Then it has the nature of bringing suffering. We call dukkha lakkana. The first one is called anicca lakkana, the impermanence. Then the nature of bringing suffering, begetting suffering, that is dukkha lakkana. Then the non-selfness, nature of not being a self, nature of not being a self, or nature of not being with a self, whatever it is the non-selfness. So these, normally in Buddhism, we talk about these three: impermanence, suffering, and non-selfness. So we should go into this deeply and analyze what are these characteristics and what is the reality. Next week, I'm planning to discuss on this topic. And it would give some insights about the how should we look into the especially the vipassana, the insight meditation in Theravada tradition. Then when we move into another topic, which is called gati, right? But there are certain synonyms. Gati means the state of the life. It means we do consider about certain 31 realms of existence. So other than that, we also can observe certain states which are also can be found as ultimate, which of ultimate nature can be verified, right? Certain states, gati, that I'll be discussing based on the yoni niyama. Then we also find another thing called ajatakasa. Ajatakasa is the infinite space. Infinite space. According to the Theravadians, the space has no limitation. It's not expanding. According to Theravada, it has been ever, forever. It has been there forever. It's an infinite space. So it's called ajatakasa. This is also can be verified with wisdom, but it has not been discussed as a separate entity. So still we have to recognize it. So that's why we'll be also discussing about this in a future lecture. So these are the natures, and other than that, we know which is space. Ajatakasa is the space. And another thing, another topic is kala. Kala is the time, right? But actually the time falls into this, according to Theravada tradition. Time falls into the conceptual realm, not the ultimate realm. But I'll be discussing them together because space-time is a very fundamental topic in physics. But this is not how the Theravadians explain it. Theravadians doesn't explain. Even these days, some physicians tend to think that the time the Einstein talked, maybe there is something more fundamental than the time that he has discussed. They are just making hypotheses on this. Space also, they are considering that there can be something very fundamental than the space that we experience. So they are going to, some even have made a module based on the connected. The things are connected to each other, unrelated with a spatial attribute. So even the physics are also going deeper into this topic. But in the Theravada tradition, time is considered something as a concept, but we have to understand what is the basic philosophy behind this. So I'll be discussing about these two also in a future lecture. So these are the topics. So it doesn't mean that time is in this group, time should be here, but as it is always related with space, and it's a very special, famous topic, I'll be discussing them together with the space. So this is the complete, this is the chart about the ultimate natures. This is a chart about the ultimate natures. There will be some other, another categorization, I would call, another section within this chart, which I would write down here later, which is the laws of nature. These are the realities, the things that exist according to Theravada tradition. But how their existence is governed by certain laws. We call it, then the entire thing can call the phenomenon. This entire phenomenon is governed by certain laws. It is not a chaos. Not a chaos. So it happens in a certain manner. There is a certain pattern. So what is this pattern? How it is governed, how it has been expressed in the Theravada tradition. We also have to discuss about this. We call Dhamma and Dhammata. So these are the mostly Dhammas. These are the Dhammas. Some of them can be put into Dhammatas. I'll be how to say, explaining the knots there. How should we understand sharply and separately, acutely defining them. But there are natures which are, it's better to say the laws that govern the existence of these realities. That's called Dhammata. I think some of you have heard about Uttuniyama, the law of weather, Chitbijaniyama, the law of the botanical world, of the trees. Then we have Chittaniyama, the law of the consciousness, Kammaniyama, the law of the karma, and all the other laws are put into Dhammaniyama. So we'll be discussing about them also briefly. So then after we have discussed about the Dhammaniyama, the niyamas, the laws, the chart would be completed. The chart would be completed. So far, now our attention is towards this grouping, right? So today I'm going to discuss about these two topics. Then we'll move on after next week. So now, I think I was able to deliver the handout yesterday night. So if you have the handout, 1.92. So far we have discussed about 92 points related to the 91 points related to the ultimacy. So the topic is Anippanna Rupa. Anippanna Rupa means there are certain material attributes that are related to the Rupa, but should not be considered or designated as separate Rupa, should not be designated as real matter. If you have the list of the Paramattha Dhammas, which I gave in the beginning of the lectures, the list of Paramattha Dhammas, in the last page number 8, I have mentioned Rupa is 18. There are 4 great elements and 14 derived elements. 4 and 14. 4 and 14 means 18. So normally in Theravada books, we find 28 types of Rupas. But actually out of them, only 18 are the real Rupas. So what are left? The number left is 10. So these 10 Rupas have been recognized within the tradition and given the name Rupa. They have been given the name Rupa. But also the tradition mentions that they should not be considered as concretely produced Rupa. That word is very necessary. Concretely produced. So these Rupas that we are discussing, or the 18, these are called concretely produced. Concretely produced. What does it mean? Concretely produced Rupa means there are 4 major causes, conditions for the arising of Rupa. There are 4 major causes that produce Rupa. What are these 4 major causes? They are Kamma. One is Kamma. Kamma produce certain Rupa. Then we have Chitta. Chitta means mentalities. The Chitta and Chaitasika together do produce some Rupa. That's why we experience certain differences in our body when our state of the mind changes. The mind changes, the body also is affected by that. That is through these mind-born matter, we call the matter which are produced by the mind. Then we have something called Uttu. Uttu is the Tejo, the 4 great elements. I'll be using more Pali terms. So Tejo means either heat or coldness. It also produces certain Rupa. Then we have nutriment, Oja. Nutriment. So after we have eaten certain food, our body gets energized. So that energy is produced by a Rupa called Oja, which we can translate as or render into English as nutriment or nutriment. So these are the 4 main conditions for the production of Rupa. Kamma produces Rupa, a subtle type of a Rupa. The Chitta produces Rupa. Then the Utu, the Tejo Dhatu, produces the Rupa in the outside world and also within our body. The main core of our body is made out of this Utu. Its Utu means produced by Tejo, the heat or the coldness. The nutriment also supports our body. They also produce some subtle Rupa that energizes our body. So these are the four main causes which produces the material things, the material realities. But the thing is, now when these four causes produce these 18 realities, 18 concretely produced matter. Concretely produced means directly produced. These four now there are 18 types of Rupa for like the four great elements: hardness, cohesion, heat, coldness, pushing nature, and also the 14 derived matter like color, sound, taste, smell, sensitivity of the eye, sensitivity of the ear. So all these matter are directly produced by these four elements, and they can be known as separate entities. Yes, they do exist in clusters, but within the cluster, we can verify or we can know their existence with their wisdom. We can imagine about their existence. But there are some other 10 types of quality, 10 qualities that are material attributes, but still cannot be recognized as separate entities. That's the difference. There are 10 materially related characteristics or material attributes that doesn't have the entity characteristic, that should not be considered as a separate entity, a separate nature, but still are found together with the Rupa. It means, for instance, now when the Rupa is produced, concretely produced Rupa, so 18 Rupa are produced by these causes. We'll be discussing them in detail when we come to the Rupa chapter. What is this production, how it is produced, how the Rupa exists, what kind of generations they have. So the Theravada tradition is rich with such information. So these causes produce 18 corporeal matter. So within them, when these corporeal matters are produced, we can also see some other extra 10 types of material attributes when these matter are produced. So what is produced, what are the real Rupa are 18. So when the 18 are found, we see some other material attributes as well. For instance, now when this matter is produced, they are producing clusters. We call Rupa Kalapa. If you think these are Rupa Kalapa, one cluster has its own existence. Another cluster has its own space and their existence. So likewise, when these clusters appear, now think that this board was the initial space, infinite space that existed forever. So if within this space, two Rupas appear because of any of these causes, two or three material clusters. Within a cluster, we can find few Rupas. Rupas are, even though we call matter, according to Theravada tradition, they are just natures. They are just qualities. So material qualities like hardness, heat, cohesion, all these are found as a cluster. So when a cluster has appeared, we can sense its hardness, the cohesion, and so forth. How they can be explained within one cluster, that is a completely different topic that we have to explain, analyze detailedly and sharply with time, right? So now if we take this one cluster, which contains few material qualities, now it appears in the initial space like the Ajata Akasa. So this space, right, is considered as, is given a name called Akasa Dhatu, for instance. Akasa Dhatu. So this Akasa Dhatu actually belongs to the infinite space, because it was the same space that existed before the Rupa has arose. But within the tradition, it has been expressed as a Rupa. Why is that? To show, the purpose of this naming is to show, even after the material clusters have appeared, They are not constant. They are not one thing. There are certain gaps. So this void space that has been explained, showing that two material clusters are different from each other. And then this also leads to understand the non-self nature of this body. Because when we think about I or myself, we never think about two I's. We never think about two selves. It's only always one I. I means the capital I. It's one capital I. There's only one self. So when we understand the rupa, the body that we like so much, that we admire so much, is a collection of separate material entities. If it is a many separate material clusters with gaps, we know that it is not a one thing. So to which material cluster should we call I? So there is a dilemma. Therefore, it is very easy when we understand that these natures are separate clusters. These rupa is a bunch of separate material clusters. It's easy to understand the non-self, that this body is not a self or this body is not I. So that's why, even though it was the initial space that existed even before the arising of rupa, the books have mentioned it, named it as a separate rupa. So it's the space, and it has a certain relationship with the rupa, that is the void nature, the gap between two clusters of rupa. So likewise, this akasa dhatu falls into this group. It's not taken as a rupa. It's not taken as a rupa. Another thing is, now sometimes now these material stuff which have 4 great elements, we call Patavi, hardness, Apo, cohesion, Tejo, the heat and coldness, Vayo, the pushing nature. So when they come together, they appear as things. They appear as material stuff, substances. They appear as substances. But even the substance can be divided, intellectually can be divided into these 4 great elements. Now, when this substance is made means appears. Actually, the substance, they appear, when they come together, they appear as a substance. It's not that a substance is made out of these 4. These are the, even while in the stage of a substance, what exists are the 4 great qualities combined together, connected together, mixed with each other. So when we are talking about the substance in the ultimate sense, according to Theravada, we are talking about 4 great natures, 4 great elements, which are natures. So some of these 4 great elements, because due to certain effects, sometimes they become very light. So they tend to sometimes levitate, or become that we feel the lightness in the body. So it's very easy to move. So such kind of a lightness appears in these realities sometimes. So we call it lightness. Sometimes they become soft. So what happens? They are found in a body normally. This is the lightness, the softness. So it becomes very easy to bend our limbs. The body becomes, sometimes we experience stiffness and softness. So according to Theravadian, this softness is an extra attribute found within the 4 great elements. This lightness is not a separate entity. It is a quality within the 4 great elements. So we also know that the 4 great elements are also qualities. They are material quality. They are not stuff. They are not things. When these qualities come together, it appears as a substance. So now we are talking about the quality of a quality. Within a quality. We can call it a secondary quality. The Patavi, Apo, Tejo, Vayo sometimes manifest lightness, sometimes manifest softness, sometimes they manifest wieldiness. W-E-I, right? V-I-E. Wieldiness. Wieldiness means adaptability. They are very adaptable to whatever act we are going to do. Sometimes our body we feel like it can be used to whatever act very effectively, efficiently. So sometimes, so all these qualities are lost. For instance, when we are sick, we feel our body is very heavy, it becomes very stiff, it's unable to be used to any activity. If someone is doing sports or someone is doing hard work, we feel like our body cannot be used in such activities. So opposite to these negative material qualities are the lightness, softness, and wieldiness. They are sub-characteristics of these four great elements. So therefore, we do not categorize these three natures, these three characteristics, sub-characteristics, as separate rupas. Rather, we name them as characteristics or qualities or changes which happen within the four great elements, of the four great elements. Right? That is how the Theravadians explain on this point. So therefore, they are categorized as, but actually they are not concepts of the mind, because their effect can be felt, their effect can be known. So now when we feel our body is soft, or when we feel our body is very light or adaptable to whatever activity, that is not something that we have created in our mind, it's something actually found. But thing is, as they are recognized as sub-characteristics of the four great elements, Theravadians do not put them under the group of Paramattas. We rather keep them as a separate quality, which is not a concept, but which doesn't fall into the group of Paramattas. So that's why they fall into this in-between list. So if you go into the handout, these three, lightness, softness, and adaptability, is explained as 1.924, 92.4, Rupasa Lahuta, lightness of four great elements which arises due to, it can happen because of good mentalities or elements of Tejo and nutriment. It can be caused. They are not arising. Such causes make the four great elements to become light sometimes. And then malleability. Malleability is the softness, Rupasa Muduta, of four great elements, which arises due to mentalities, elements of Tejo and nutriment. This softness is just a mode of the four elements. They are just the mode of the four elements. When this mode is present, a person can move his limbs more easily. Right? So that is how we explain it. The Rupasa Kammanjanta, wieldiness of four great elements, which arises due to mentalities and elements of Tejo and nutriment. This wieldiness is just a mode of the four great elements. When this mode is present, a person can work effectively. So they are also categorized under this in this section. Then we have another two material qualities, especially now think about performing a certain act. Now, if I erase the unconditioned part, because it's not much necessary to this lecture. Now, if we think, according to the Theravada tradition, how the Theravadins explain. Now, if this is considered as a body, and if this is considered as a hand, if someone wants to lift this hand to this position, right? If someone wants to lift this hand to this position. Now, according to the doctrine, hand is a collection of rupas, separate clusters of rupa, right? Rupa Kalapa we call it, a cluster. Cluster is not a one rupa. I'll remind again. Cluster is not a one single rupa. It's a combination of many rupas, many material characteristics. And these clusters also exist separately. Within a cluster, rupa are connected or combined or mixed with each other inseparably. But the different clusters exist separately. Now, when someone wants to move this hand upwards, how the Theravadians would explain this function? Now, the consciousness, chitta, makes an effort. It wants to lift the arm. So with the consciousness, there appears in this area, right? In this area, which is necessary, there appears a certain rupa. Mind produced by the mind. This blue color rupa is the matter produced by mind. Consciousness produced by mind. It suddenly appears. These rupa are not cells. They are not biological cells. These are some kind of specially which have the air, more air element. These rupas have the abundant air, so they can create a certain energy within that area. So that's how, according to Theravadians, we get the strength. Strength means not the physical strength necessity with food, given by the food, but this is talking about at that moment we get a certain energy to move. This force is produced by these newly created rupa. They vanishes immediately. They do not exist after the act is done. For that moment, a new type of rupa with abundant vayu, abundant air element is produced over here. Right, abundant air element. Then this air element, right? Air element is a pushing nature. It pushes the material towards some direction. So air can be flown. Flown means the air element. We are talking the air element. So in this cluster, in this we call the group of clusters. When a group of clusters appear, the air element could push the entire group towards any direction, because air can flow to any direction. But here, when we have an intention to lift our hand, the hand never moves downwards. It always moves upwards. So it shows that this material things that are produced by this chitta are related to chitta. Otherwise, the pushing can happen towards any direction. But we experience in our day-to-day life that when we want to lift our hand, the hand moves upwards rather than not moving the downward, not moving sideways. So why is that? Why the body is acting according to the mind? This is a very important question. Why does the mind act according to the, why does the body act according to the mind? That is because mind and the material thing are connected. There are certain type of, so the black color rupa, the black rupa are not related with mind. They are produced by various causes. But now here, there is an extra type of a rupa produced by the consciousness. So it's directly related with the consciousness, with abundant vayu, abundant air. Air element. Air element, right? So this air could flow towards any direction. To prevent that, this consciousness make a certain imprint. If we zoom this, for instance, if we zoom this rupa, if this is a rupa with abundant air, for example, a cluster of rupa with abundant air, a group of rupas, within these rupa kalapas, there appears a certain modification. So, sorry. So if these are the material realities, the clusters with abundant air, right? So these material things, the chitta makes an impact. These material things are produced by the chitta at the same time, according to the intention of the chitta. So what was the intention? To bring the hand up. So therefore, instead of flowing or pushing any other direction spontaneously, it behaves according to the mind. So according to the Theravadians explain that these material clusters, when the material clusters appear because of the rupa, nama, chitta, there is a certain imprint in the chitta, a thing we call a certain change happens within these clusters. That is that the air of this group collectively moves upwards, right? It moves upwards. Why is that? These clusters contain a certain modification made by the consciousness. We can also call it the intimation, right? The chitta causes these rupas appear based on by the chitta, and they with abundant air element. So that air element flows or pushes, make the force, effort, or we can call the force according to the chitta. So chitta is related to these consciousness. So this modification can be known with our mind. Modification, if that modification was not there, it would have flown anywhere, it would have pushed any side. So this modification is also recognized as something that exists, and it disappears together with it. When the chitta passes away, this modification vanishes. The rupa still exists because rupa has a longer lifespan than the consciousness, according to Theravada. So after chitta passes away, this modification or intimation passes, but the rupa still remains. But the thing is, because of this modification, as it directed the push towards that a certain direction, the hand starts to move towards the intended direction. Right? So this modification is something in the vayo, the air element. It is in the air element. It is not a separate quality. The air element pushes, but air element is directed towards towards the direction, intended direction. So therefore, this modification is considered as a anipanna rupa. It's not considered as a separate entity, because it is a modification found in the air element, which is produced by the consciousness. This cluster is produced by consciousness. This modification is caused by consciousness. It's not produced. We don't call it as been produced. What has been produced is the air element, the four great elements. But the air element behaves according to the consciousness. That behaving is caused by a certain modification made by the consciousness. That modification is not considered as a separate entity. So we put them here. So in the same way, while we speak outwards, our sound, the sound we utter, is modified according to the consciousness, according to our intention. So there is a modification of sound. There's a modification of sound. So that is also another type of modification. So that's why we have two types of modifications, 92.2 and 92.3. Bodily intimation. This is a certain modification caused by the mind in chittaja vayo dhatu while making intentional bodily movements. Vachi vinyatti, verbal intimation. This is a certain modification caused by the mind in chittaja patavi dhatu. According to the commentaries, patavi dhatu, but according to some sub-commentaries, within the sound. Right? Modification of sound or modification of hardness, we'll discuss them when we come to the Rupa chapter while speaking. So that's how the sound is produced according to our intention. So these modifications are not recognized as separate entities. They are recognized as certain material attributes of some material stuff. So these are the anipanna rupas. So then we go to the next page. These rupa exist in generations normally. Right? Generations. So within a generation of rupa, when a rupa generation begins newly, rupa arises, passes away. Every rupa arises and passes away. It has its own existence. So when a rupa arises of a generation, better to say rupa arise, exist and pass away, right? So each and every rupa arise, exist and pass away, right? So in a generation, right? Okay, we'll come from the behind. So rupa exists, arise and pass away. So this passing away of the rupa, passing away, the vanishing, the nature of vanishing, it is an incident we can call. The nature of vanishing, disappearing, is considered, is given the name anicchata. If you go into the list 1.92.10, 1.92.10, anicchata, breaking up or vanishing of matter in a rupa kalapa. So This vanishing itself is also named as a rupa within the tradition. In the Dhammasangani, it has been named. But vanishing of a rupa and rupa are two things. For instance, if you talk about a sound, the sound appears and sound vanishes. This vanishing, disappearing, it's an incident. It comes up and disappears. Now, for instance, a light, when we switch off a light, suddenly the light vanishes from our sight. So this vanishing, disappearing is not the rupa itself. It's also a very important factor to be known. When we come into these universal characteristics, I'll be discussing this matter in detail. Vanishing itself is not the reality. Reality is one thing, vanishing is something else. It is not a thing, it's not a substance. It's not an entity, it's not a reality. It is something related to the reality, but it is a happening. It is a happening. So therefore, this passing away should not be considered as ultimate reality, right? So that is anicchata. Then when a rupa has appeared, each and every rupa decays. Decays means it loses its ability to keep on existing, to continue its existence. The rupa loses its ability to continue its existence. So that deteriorating nature of a rupa is called jarata, the decay, jarata. 1.92.9 jarata, aging or maturing of matter. Maturing means it comes into a matured state or unable to exist any further. So we can call it decaying, the deterioration of the rupa, the ability to exist, deteriorate. So then aging, then we come into the genesis, the arising, genesis. So we in the Theravada tradition, we recognize two types of genesis. Actually, sometimes we call about three types of genesis. Anyway, now we consider about each and every rupa has its own genesis arising. Each and every rupa has its own arising. That is obvious. But when it comes to genesis, we discuss about as a generation. So if a generation of rupa, for instance, when we take a bath, when the cool water falls into our body, a new change happens in our body. New rupa starts to appear in our body because of the effect of the outside rupa, the water. So these new cold generations started at one point, and the generation ends at a certain point, right? So the arising of the first rupa, in a generation is called upachaya, the arising of a first rupa. Then the subsequent arising, this is the first arising in green color, first arising of the first rupa. Then the subsequent arising of rupas in a generation are termed differently. But in the end, when we talk momentarily, it's the same arising. But in terms of a generation, this is the first arising. These are the subsequent or following arisings. So this first arising is called upachaya, and the subsequent arising are called santati. Arising of a reality and the reality are two things. The decaying and the reality are two things. The passing away and the reality are two things. So therefore, we should not consider them as separate entities. Right? So these are the 10 types of rupas, 10 types of material qualities that are known within the Theravada tradition, but not categorized as separate entities. So these are called anippanna rupas. They are anippanna rupas. So I'll be concluding. I'll take the next topic to the next week. If I read the paragraph 1.92, there are 4 major causes which produce matter. These are the 4 major causes. This is summarizing of the lecture. These are the 4 major causes. There are kamma, chitta, mind together with mental factors, uttu, the element of tejo, and oja. Matter that are directly produced by any of the above causes are called nippanna rupa, concretely produced matter. There are 18 such rupas, right? 18 such. I think we have discussed about this in previous lectures. They are called Theravadians. Then there are few material attributes explained within the doctrine of Theravada, which are not please cut the do, which are not designated as concretely produced matter. There are 10 types of rupa which we explained today are not designated as concretely produced matter. They are called anippanna rupa, corporeality not concretely produced by any of the four major causes of corporeality. They are not considered as paramatta dhammas, but still they cannot be termed as concepts as well, because we do see a validity for their existence. Do you see a validity? But thing is, they cannot be called as a separate entity, right? Anippana rupas are related to concrete produced matter in certain ways. They are related. So out of the 10, right? Out of the 10, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, the modifications. While we do X, the Vayo Dhatu is directed towards the intended direction, the modification. And then while you are speaking, how the sound is modified. And then these lightness, softness, wieldiness, they are all we can call changes which have occurred in the four great elements in a material cluster. So we can call them sub characteristics of material stuff. Material natures in Theravada are characteristics, are natures. And these are sub natures of these natures, we can call them. So that's why these 5 are, we can see them as related or directly connected with the 4 great elements. That's why I said out of the 10, these 5 can be known as material attributes directly. But what do you think? What do we think about the Akasa Dhatu, the space, the voidness? Voidness is related to the Ajata Akasa. It is the infinite space that already existed. So what happens is when 2 material clusters appear, that already existing space is termed as another, is given a separate name. So other than that, this space has been existing even before the Rupa has occurred, right? So it actually falls into this Ajataka, this group, but still we keep them here because the doctrine have mentioned about them. Then what about this arising, decaying and vanishing nature? Arising, decaying and vanishing nature. They are happenings to the Rupa. They should fall into these universal characteristics. Samanya Lakkana means Anicca Lakkana, impermanence. Impermanence shows that they having arisen, they decay and passes away. That nature of arising, nature of decaying, nature of passing away falls into this category. So even someone would, if say there are only 5 Anippanna Rupas, like the sub-characteristics of Rupas, I would still agree with that because Akasa Dhatu falls here, and then the 4 Lakkana Rupas mean the 4 aging, 2 types of arising, aging and decaying should fall under here. So anyway, as the doctrine has mentioned them as 10 Anippanna Rupas, I went with that approach. I think you got the idea. The main idea that I want to convey with this lecture is within the ultimate categorization, we had Rupa, they were separate entities. So we had 18 types of Rupa, but there are some other material qualities, natures related to these 18 Rupa, which are not categorized as separate Paramatta Dhammas, but their existence or their existence can be verified with our understanding. So we list them as a separate group. So next week, I'll be talking about some of these Paccaya forces, which I have explained. It may also take an entire lecture to show how these Paccaya forces work. It's a very interesting lecture. It will be a very interesting, and this would clearly enhance your knowledge in the insight meditation, because it's very necessary to know the difference between Anicca and Anicca Lakkana, the impermanent nature and the impermanence. So this is very important to differentiate these 2 things. And then this Gati will also be a new lecture for many of you. Then after discussing about Ajatakas and Kala, we go into the concepts, and then we go into the Dhamma and Dhammata. So we are getting closing to the end of the lectures. So I'll conclude the lecture and give the opportunity for the Q&A session.
Thank you, Bhante. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Hello, everyone. If you have any questions, you can raise your hand or you can put your question in the chat box and we'll read it out for you. In the meantime, good morning, Bhante. I have a question about the Lahuta, Mudita, and Kamanyata. So, so you said that Bhante, they are they can be considered as like sub characteristics of the rupas, right? And then but and then and then we know that, for example, the four Mahabhuta, four great elements, they can be in fact they are the qualities or they are attributes, right? So these these three Lahuta, Mudita, Kamanyata can be called the sub attribute or the sub quality of those four things, right?
Yeah.
But and then for the four great elements, they are like existing in a kind of a range, because for example we have the hardness and cold, hardness and softness, just like it going up and down in a range. And for example, like the heat element, that is sometimes it's hot, sometimes it's cold, so it's going up and down in a range. But and then so can we understand these three Lahuta, Mudita, Kamanyata also existing in a sense of a range as well? But if we think about it that way, then because we see that sometimes they are in existence together with these great elements, but sometimes they are not in existence. So how should we understand that, Bhante?
For that, Dr. Ryan, we have to go into explain how the four great elements should be understood within a substance, as a substance. If I go into that explanation, it would take, actually I'd normally take 1 or 2 lectures to completely explain this. How should we understand the four great elements as a substance? So it's like when we say the hardness, it's like if I brief the explanation now, when we explain about the four great elements, we have to explain them within a Rupa Kalapa and their effects outside the Rupa Kalapa as well. And we have to take a group of Rupa Kalapas together, and still sometimes we find as a group also we find the existence of four great elements. So when we explain it in that way, we find that the very basic characteristic of hardness, I'm not talking about the softness, the comparative softness hardness thing, because when it comes to the comparative, like as you said, the range, the softness, the lightness, the hardness, grossness, the softness, they are all attributes of Patavi Dhatu. But normally the teachers say, some scholars like the teachers say that when in a cluster of rupas, when there is more space element, the gap, the void nature, and also there is more vayu, the air element, then what happens? Hardness is felt as softness. But the real actual attribute, characteristic of Patavi is its resistance for another Patavi to go through its space. That is a very basic explanation of Patavi. Like for instance, when we take a substance, the hardness exists in the entire range. So that another way of explaining hardness is the resistance, the prevention, the field or a shield that prevents another substance going into that range. So that's why it acts as a surface. So something can be kept upon it. So that is the very basic explanation of Patavi. The range that we find in Patavi is found as a mixture. Like when Patavi is found with more, when Patavi elements, that more Rupa Kalapas with Patavi are found with more space in between, and also some air element, the Rupa Kalapas with air element are around them, then the entire body we touch is felt as soft. So therefore, this range, softness and grossness in Patavi has to be explained with regard to the material bodies and also the one Rupa Kalapa And so then what happens, we have to explain how the four great elements exist within the Rupa Kalapa and how they affect the other Rupa Kalapa, affect beyond the Rupa Kalapa. For example, when a heat Rupa Kalapa with heat element is brought close to another element, because of this heat of this A element, A Rupa Kalapa, the heat of the beak changes. It shows that the heat element either it transforms or better to say it affects the other element. So therefore, the four great elements do affect the other elements beyond their kalapa. Internal elements we call, like within the kalapa. So likewise, when we go into that explanation, we find now this rupa kalapas. When we find we see feel it as soft, we sometimes feel it as light. Now this lahuta, mudita, and kamanyata is something in a rupa kalapa. Now in our body, our kalapa rupas are compact. Rupa kalapas are compact. So when the mind, certain wholesome minds appear, they make a direct impact to the four great elements, and make a change within them. Make a change. It's not by producing more air element, or it's not by producing more space element. They directly affect the four great elements and cause a slight change. So when that slight change happens, that change is what is called lightness, softness, as wieldiness. So so it's like the range that we experience in Patavi is based on few factors. This lightness, softness, and wieldiness is directly caused by a mind, or when they arises due to nutriment or heat element, there is a slight modification within the Rupa Kalapa, the quality of the Rupa Kalapa.
I see. Thank you so much.
We will when we come into the Rupa chapter in future, we'll try to look into this with more angles.
I see. Okay, thank you so much, Bhante.
Yes,
Sadhu. Please go ahead, Mr. Ananda.
Thank you, Dr. Ryan. Swaminathan Tirunsaranai. Actually, I have a few small questions, but anyway, the first one you mentioned at the end, Anitya and Anitya Lakkhana. So Anitya means Anitya Dharma, Bhante?
Yeah, Anitya means Anitya reality which is impermanent.
That is Anitya Lakshana, is it, Bhante, or Anitya Dharma?
No, Anitya Lakkhana means the impermanence. Impermanence is a noun, right?
Yeah, okay.
I'll erase this. So when we say anicca is the reality. Anicca Lakkhana the nature of impermanence. So if any reality is affected by this nature phenomenon, we can call phenomenon of impermanence, that reality is called anicca. So any reality which has the anicca lakkhana is called anicca. Anicca is a reality. Anicca lakkhana is a law or a phenomenon or a nature related to that.
Oh, I see. Okay. I think in another lecture I heard, I think it makes sense. Anitya Dharma. So if I remember correct, I'm not very sure. You have to differentiate between Anitya Dharma and Anitya Lakshana. So Anitya Dharma, if I'm not wrong, mentioned as Panchupadanaskandha. So I think.
Anicca, but I say Anicca and Anicca Dhamma same.
Okay. Okay. All right.
So this is Anicca Lakkhana is Anicca Dhammatha.
Dhammatha. That is Trilakshana, is it?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'll explain this when we come to the Samanya Lakshana.
And there's another question, not really related to this, Bhante, but like now we are talking about these as Theravada teachings.
Yeah.
In Mahayana, don't they believe or don't they kind of study this Abhidhamma? Or do they, or don't they?
It's like this. Now, after the second council, there was a split within the Buddhist sect, the main Buddhist branch. So they were divided as Mahasangika and Theravadians. So it is reported that the Mahasangikas excluded the Abhidhamma from their doctrine, So they also excluded some other things that they consider that they are not the direct teachings of the Buddha. Then the Mahayana group that emerged mainly based on that Mahasangikas did not have the Abhidhamma doctrine. Within the Theravadians, during their gradual development as a sect, and certain stages, they were divided into two groups. Like there was a group called Sarvastivadins. So these Sarvastivadins also got a separate Abhidhamma Pitaka. They also have 7 books, quite different from what we have in the Theravada sect. So now these Abhidhamma of the Sarvastivadin, they also have their commentaries and sub-commentaries. Commentaries are called Vibhasha. We call them Attakatha in Theravada tradition. They were called Vibhasha. So now when we consider about the Vajrayana, the Tibetan sect, Tibetan group, they and also some the Korean Buddhist sects which are related to Theravada. Related mean they are a hybrid. We can call they are mixed. They are Mahayana elements and Theravada elements. And also when we call it the Vajrayana, they are directly related with the Mahayana, the Mahasangika group. But when they come into the the Korean sect is the Korean, even the Mahayanas, not about Theravadians, they are also Mahayana sect. So these Mahayana Korean sects, some say they have Theravada elements, as I remember. Then the Vajrayanas, they, even though they are mainly related with the Mahasangika group, they do study the Sarvastivadis Abhidhamma. Even in the Vajrayana, they study this, some part. Maybe they studied as academic studies, or maybe they consider it as authentic teachings. But when we come to the Theravadians, they have their specific Abhidhamma Pitaka apart from the other groups.
Okay, Bhante. That's another one little thing. Now, beyond these paramattas that we discuss, are there any other paramattas that Buddha has not explained that, or this is it?
That is also something that we are unable to directly answer, because if you look into Rerukani Chandrimala Mahanayaka Thera, who was a very well-renowned Theravada scholar in Sri Lanka, who studied in Burma, he mentions in his book, we exactly don't know how many Paramatta Dhammas the Buddha understood under the Bodhi tree. But according to Theravada, we are talking within the Theravada tradition. So in the Theravada Abhidhamma, we found with only 82. 82 means actually it should be 72 when we exclude these 10 rupas. So 82 or 72 Paramatta Dhammas that have been explained within the doctrine. So he suggests that we don't know exactly how many Paramatta Dhammas he understood. But when we look meticulously examine the doctrine, we find some other qualities are also found in the doctrine which are not termed as Paramatta Dhammas within the Abhidhamma Pitaka. But within the Theravadians, we can easily verify their existence. So therefore, I am unable to give an exact answer that this is all. And I personally, what I understand looking into the teachings is, now, for example, if you go into the Patthana, there is a causal, conditional relationship. Even Venerable Ledi Sayadaw says that this conditional relationship does not cover the entire causal aspects of the world. We recognize that with Patthana, you cannot cover every causal relationships. What was necessary, like these are direct causal relationships of Nama and Rupa, and which is enough, which was enough for the liberation, which was enough for the eradication of self-view and certain defilements. So if we take that approach which was given to the Patthana, even with the realities, we can come into an idea that what has been mentioned within the tradition are the relevant ones for the liberation. So I think it would be too hasty to decide that all the realities have been explained within the Abhidhamma or within the Theravada tradition, because Buddha in his one sutta very clearly mentions, what I understood is like the leaves of this entire forest, and what I teach you is like what is the handful of leaves that I have collected. So all these evidences should suggest that there can be some other ultimate natures, but not directly relevant with our liberation. So maybe they were not preached.
Okay, Bhante. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Bhante. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Please go ahead, Nan Panyaloka.
Yes. Good morning,
Yes,
Bhante.
Good morning. Good morning.
Yes. I have 3 questions.
Okay, sure.
Yeah. So concern to about Ajatakasa, as you mentioned, it means unlimited space. So unlimited space, can we consider its object of the Akasa Nanjayatana of the Aruba Vachana?
That's another good question. I think last time when we were in Myanmar, we also discussed about this unconditioned nature of Ajatakasa, I think, right? So this Ajatakasa and the unlimited space in Akasa and Anchayatana, it's another very good question related to meditation, actually. So when we come into the Rupavachara Jhana, right, Rupavachara Jhana, we find this is the Patibhaga Nimitta. I think, Sally, you remember, right? Patibhaga Nimitta. This is the 5th jhana, 5th Rupa jhana, right? If you take this is the 5th Rupa jhana, then when we go into the Akasa and Anchayatana, what we do is, right? What we do is, we just neglect this Patibhaga Nimitta. If the Patibhaga Nimitta is like this, we just neglect it. So what happens? The mind, instead of taking the Nimitta, it starts to take the, now, if the Nimitta was here, right? If this was the Nimitta, and this was the Nimitta we consider, now what happens with this contemplation, we take the void space. Now we are not contemplating the Nimitta anymore. So we are focusing about this space where the Nimitta existed. Now, if we take this as the Nimitta, for instance, this is the Nimitta, we just avoid this, that the space where the Nimitta exists already. It's a mental object. So the space where this is the space the Nimitta consumes. Now, when the Nimitta is not there, the same space is the object of Akasa and Anchayatana. The object of Acha. But this space is connected with the unlimited space, right? It's similar, it's connected. Therefore, we consider it as Ananta Akasa. It's not that we spread our attention towards the entire space. We are focusing on this space only. Why it is called Ananta Akasa? Because it is connected with the unlimited space. That's why. So this Ajatakasa and this Akasa are different.
So you mean is it not the object of Akasa and Anchayatana?
No, not the infinite space. Object of, because infinite space, you cannot take it as an object. It's a very tough object to take, right? Because it doesn't have any limit. So object of Akasa, to get a Samadhi, you have to have a specific object. This is the object. And actually this object is also, there's some slight difference than Ajatakasa. Now this Patibhaga Nimitta is mind-made. Sanyaja, if you remember, right? We look into the Nimitta, we get the Uggaha Nimitta and Patibhaga Nimitta. It's a Panyati. So when you remove a Panyati, the Panyati never exists in the space actually. So when we remove the Panyati, the void of a Panyati is also a void, is also Panyati actually. So even though we mentioned that this is the Akasa, the space, right? This is also a concept actually. It's also a concept. This concept is Now, when we think about, it's very difficult to distinguish the conceptual space and the actual space. Conceptual space and actual space do exist in reality. So this is a conceptual. Why do we call it conceptual space? This is the void of a concept. If you think about a real object, the void of the real object is actual space. The void of a conceptual object is a concept. So that's why in the classification, we call it as a conceptual object. So this Ajatakasa, we cannot call it a concept because it exists. Without that, nothing is possible. So the existence of Ajatakasa is verified by the pressure. The same amount of matter kept in a more space and lesser space, we can see the difference of the pressure. So it shows that the space really exists, even though the Theravadians have not discussed about it. Therefore, so when we say object of Akasananchayatana in brief, without going into that level, we should say it's the space of this limit. Why it is called Ananta Akasa? As you said, your question is very perfectly correct. But in the contemplation, yogi has to contemplate Ananta Akaso, Ananto Akaso, unlimited space, unlimited space. So whenever ladies say, why it is called unlimited space? Because it's connected with the unlimited space. It is related to unlimited space. Not that the yogi have to consider about the unlimited space. So that object, I don't think that object would be a very conducive for a higher concentration. So object of Akasananchayatana is this range.
Yeah, thank you so much, Bante. So, what is object of the Ajatakasa?
Ajatakasa. Ajatakasa is the unlimited space, limitless space, the universe. I think in the Sarvastivadi doctrine, it's considered as Asankata, right? I think you mentioned once.
Yes.
Yeah, it's Asankata, according to Sarvastivadins. But Theravadins does not recognize it. Yeah.
Yeah, so second question about, in your handout, you mentioned five Lakkhana, about the Kaya Vinyati, Vacha Vinyati, and Lahuta sometimes. But sometimes I remember when I study Abhidhamma in class. So why sometimes we separate the Vinyati and the Vikara Rupa, these two positions, but sometimes combined together.
Yeah, exactly.
We consider the five kind of things.
Five vikara. Yeah. Sometimes we say 3 vikara and sometimes we get 5 vikara. So why we say 5 vikara is because now you can see these all, lightness, softness, wieldiness is something related to the 4 great elements. Then it's a change that happens in the 4 great elements. So at the same time, Kaya Vinyati and Vachi Vinyati are also certain modification, changes that happen in the 4 great elements. Because when we want to move, the Vayu Dhatu is directed towards the intended direction. So it's a change. And the sound is modified by the change in the 4 great elements. So that is why, also of the sound. So that's why they are called the Vikara. They are the changes of the Rupas. They are the changes of Rupas. But when we come in another classification, we say 3 Vikara and 2 Vinyati. Because Vinyati has a other than being a change of the Rupa, it also has another function. That is to make the relationship between the Chitta and the body. At the same time, it makes the others to understand what we intend to do. That's called Vinyati. Vinyati means the one who makes others known. So when we lift our hand and try to hit someone, they know now he's going to hit me. So when we speak out something, or when we touch someone, with the touch, we know what's the intention is, whether he's angry or whether he's with lust or whatever. We can guess it. At the same time, when we speak out some words, the people can guess our intentions. So Vinyati has another special function called making others to know the intentions of the doer. So that's why in that regard, Vinyati is taken separately, and the remaining 3 are taken as the mere changes of the reality of the 4 great elements. But actually Vinyatis are also changes occurring in the 4 great elements. So in some occasions we take all 5 as Vikara, some occasions 3 Vikara and 2 Vinyati separately.
Yes, really good explanation. So I would like to know about the Kaya Vinyati and Svachi Vinyati. So their space, their life space just lasts for one consistent moment. So
Yeah.
remaining series Vikara Rupa less maybe 17th moment, right?
Yeah.
Yes,
Exactly.
And another question about Lakhana.
Mhm.
I remember about the Lakhana, we have 3 kind of Lakhana. But you mentioned about 4 Lakhana. It's the Upajaya, Santati, Jarata, and Anicata. So I think it's Upajaya and Santati we consider as a Jati. But here, why you spread the four kind of Lakhana?
Because that is how it has been explained in the Dhamma Sangani. That's how. When this is how it's explained in the Abhidhammatta Sangaha, right? When we go into Dhamma Sangani, we find 5 Lakkana. Achaya, Upachaya, Santati, Jarata, Anichata. Achaya, Upachaya can be taken as one. So when we come to the commentarial level, we find Upachaya, Santati, Jarata, Anichata. But when you go into Dhamma Sangani, we find another word called Achaya. Achaya is the initial arising of Rupa in a generation. Upachaya is the rising while the generation is growing, developing. Santati, after the development, when it comes to a plateau, like constant level, the momentary arising of Rupa. So sometimes we can call it 5, sometimes we can call it 4. As you said, Upachaya and Santati, as they are both, as we mentioned, they are more in terms of momentarily existence, they are all arising. So we can call them Jati and reduce them into 3 even. So we can have 3 Lakkana Rupa, 4 Lakkana Rupa, and 5 Lakkana Rupa. This is only Rupa. We are not talking about the rising of Chitta here, right? So when we say 3 Lakkana, Anicca, Dukkha, Anatta, that is different. Anicca, Dukkha, Anatta and Jati, Jara, Marana are different. So when we say Jati Rupa, Jarata Rupa, Aniccata Rupa, they all fall into the Anicca Lakkana. They all fall into Anicca Lakkana, right? Anicca is the Lakkana that is mainly related to the reality. Dukkha and Anatta Lakkanas are something that we have to understand as a secondary step. Secondary. Anicca is directly related to the Rupa. Arising, decaying, and passing away. This is the Anicca Lakkana. Dukkha Lakkana is because of these 3 characteristics exist within a reality. It causes the dukkha, suffering, some other troublesome realities to happen. And because of these 2 characteristics, we find this is not a self. This is not with a self. So Anatta is the Trishri, like Trishri, right? So first primary, secondary, and how do you call it? Treasury, like treasury, something like that. The third step. Yeah. So it's not equal. It's not equal.
Yeah. So thank you so much, Bhante. Yeah.
Yes, sorry. Yes, Dr. Ryan, how do you call the first primary, secondary, and the next one is?
Primary, secondary, and I'm not sure, Bhante.
Okay.
Sorry,
Right.
Bhante. Yeah.
Sorry for that. Sorry.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, please go ahead, Mr. Ananda.
Okay, Mr. Ananda.
Anasa, I'm just asking because there's not many questions today. Now, Upadana, I don't know whether I'm right or wrong again, is not seen as a Paramatta. Bhante, is that right? Upadana is not a part of Chitta, right? Like Tanha Pachya Upadana.
It's a Chetasika.
I know. So is it
Upadana is reality in terms of explanation.
Yeah, it's a Chetasika, but what is that Chetasika? Where do you find it? Under 52? Do you see anywhere?
Lobha and Ditti.
Oh, it is okay. So is it
Lobha and Ditti?
Yeah, but it is not shown as a separate one, isn't it? Any reason?
That for example, we don't find the Chetasika called Kilesa, right? We don't find a Chetasika called Asava. So All the names we cannot find within the Chetasika group. These are just now when we say Lobha, Lobha is the main characteristics of attaching towards the object. Then it has some other we can call secondary characteristics, but still now when we say Lahuta Muduta is secondary of Patavi, Lahuta Muduta is not reality. They are just partial attributes, like they are just effects happening on the Rupa. But when we say Lobha has a secondary attribute, means it's the functioning of Lobha. Lobha has few functions. It has few characteristics. The very basic of all is it attached to the object. Sometimes it bounds with the object. It grabs the object strongly. It follows the mind stream. It bounds out with the samsara. So all these are the functions of Lobha. So when we say Sangyojana, we don't find a separate Chetasika called Sangyojana. Upadana, we don't find. Kilesa, Anusaya. So these are the we can call functions of mentality.
Those are the states kind of that, and yeah, that you can kind of understand. But Upadana, I thought it kind of little different. It has a Chetasika, like Passa is a Chetasika, right? Passa is a Chetasika. Even though we see it as a state kind of, or the activity.
No, Upadana is not we are not talking about the grasping. Grasping is done by the Chetasika. So Lobha, now when we say about Chetasika, we have three types of definitions. The subjective definition, instrumental definition, abstract definition. So Chitta is the reality which knows the object, is a subjective definition. Chitta is the reality by which the other Chetasikas knows the object, is the instrumental definition. Chitta is the knowing itself.
Yeah.
It's the abstract definition. So likewise, Lobha is the grasping itself. So that's the Upadana of Lobha, Upadana function of Lobha. So Lobha is called Upadana because it grasps the object. So the grasping itself is a reality. It's not, we don't consider it as a separate from the Lobha. So likewise, Kilesa is the burning nature of the burning of the mind. Sangyojana, another factor, Sangyojana, we can call binding with the samsara. So Buddha mentions in the Mahamalukya Sutta, the Lobha is the Sangyojana, at the same time is the Anusaya. So based on the functions, based on the characteristics, we have termed them separately, because in the sutta we find that Upadana is threefold as Kamupadana, Dittupadana, Attavadupadana, and Silabhatupadana.
Yeah, okay. Why I asked is that, you see Lobha and Machcharya, like it's kind of the same basket, but as shown as two Chetasikas, but Upadana is not kind of shown separately. So I think it, as you said, it's part of the Lobha.
Right.
Okay, grasping part of it. Okay, Vande, thank you so much.
Thank you, Bhante. Sadhu. And please go ahead, Dr. Jared.
Yes, Jared.
Therwan Saranai Swamin Wahanse.
Therwan Saranai.
Swamin Wahanse, maybe this is a question for a different time, but since we were talking about different characteristics of Rupa, is there any particular explanation in the Theravada tradition about the gravity or the electromagnetism?
Yeah. So when we say about electromagnetism, we are talking mainly about the attraction, right?
It's just the transfer of energy without matter, as it's explained in science or physics. So I'm going to answer because if you take, for example, light or UV rays or even the heat radiation, not conduction or convection, there is a certain phenomenon explained as energy being transferred without the presence of matter.
Yeah, so in that the Theravada tradition, this falls under the Rupa chapter. Actually, we do analyze this into, I would not say in the scientific approach, but within the Theravada we can go into much more deep aspects of the Rupa. So when we say photons, for instance, that carry the electromagnetic force, I'm correct, right? Photons carry. Photons do carry
Yes,
the electromagnetic,
That's
right?
true. Yes.
So, right. So photons is a particle, but doesn't have any mass, right? So it's not without the matter.
Yeah.
So according to the tradition, we categorize. If we talk in the photons, the light particles, we call. So they are considered as separate kalapas. So the traditions recognize the light, sun rays, the moon rays do have 4 great elements. So as it is a particle, though it doesn't have a mass, it's impossible that the 2 photons go through each other, right? 2 photons can clash upon each other, and they may change into other particles, or they may emit some forces. So therefore, the clashing shows that there is a hardness within them. So therefore, when we go talk about the force carrying particles, when we look into that in terms of Theravada explanations, and the books clearly mentions that the sun rays, moon rays do have 4 great elements, and they are just particles. Even though they are massless, they are considered as realities. That is one aspect of talking about the force carrying. Then we talk about effect of a kalapa towards another kalapa. Now we recognize always there should be a void. Most of the cases, there are discussions about some cases that there is no void, so kalapas are stick to each other in some cases, but in most of the cases they are with a void space. But this kalapa, tejo of this kalapa, heat of this kalapa, does affect the other kalapa. So this is a transferring of energy or effect. So what happens when the kalapa, this kalapa comes to closer, the heat of this kalapa increases. So in the Theravada perspective, without the material stuff, there is a transferring of the energy. So that, how does that transferring happens? It's not with the particle, because now carrying of electromagnetism with light is a separately addressed in the Theravada, not in the terms of electromagnetism, but how they function. So now when we say the transferring of energy, we do see that even the tiniest elements of the Theravada tradition are with separate void space, are separated by the void space. Still, there is an effect from this heat of this kalapa, affect this kalapa. So there is one kind of a transfer of energy. Then we talk about the attraction within the kalapas. So one kalapa is attracted to another kalapa. So that's why it's not possible to separate them. So Theravadians talk the attraction in terms of apo. We call it in terms of apo, the holding nature, the attractive nature. So within the kalapa also, the great elements are attracted to each other. Then outside the kalapa, one kalapa attracts some other kalapa. So there is one kind of attraction, like a plus minus force that attracts each other, which goes beyond the kalapa. So this is how I would make that the effects are explained without the particles. Particles mean the kalapa. So effects can be found beyond the kalapa. And also, when we transfer energy from some place to another, it always, according to Theravadians, comes with kalapa. Though they are very light, still as they act as particles. Now, the very basic characteristic of a particle is it doesn't let another particle to go through its space. The resistance is there. This resistance is called Patavi. That's another way of explaining that. So in the particle physics, the fundamental elements are the 6 subatomic particles and the force carrying particles. So as they are known as particles, why do we call them particles? Because they clash upon each other. After they are clash, because they don't have mass, that is something else. So they clash and they cannot go through. Sometimes they merge into a newer particle. But according to Theravadians, what is happening, like if something could clash upon each other, it shows the hard element, the Patavi Dhatu, is present. So therefore, I would divide into two ways. The carrying of the forces happening with particles is explained with Rupa Kalapa. But at the same time, there is energy transferring between Kalapas. So that we normally does not say a Kalapa from here carries the energy to this. Even they are very close, this affects this. That's how the Theravadians explain.
Hema Swaminathan, thanks for the explanation.
Okay, okay, sadhu, sadhu.
Sadhu.
Yeah, sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Thank you so much, Bante. Yeah, I don't see any more question here, Bante. So,
Okay, okay. So yeah, then we'll when we come into the Rupa also we'll have more explanations about this four great element. That will be really interesting, and I also like to discuss on this more detail. We'll come into that when in future lectures. So we'll conclude the class because the time has passed. So with this merit of discussing Dhamma, may all of you be able to understand the true Dhamma precisely and attain the Nirvana, and may this merit help to the prolongation of the Buddha's teachings. Buddha sasanang chirantithatu, Buddha sasanang chirantithatu, Buddha sasanang chirantithatu, sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.
yeah, sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Thank you very much, Bante.